All right. So in order to get a single information from the database, in order to showcase the information in this page, we're going to need to run what you call a frontend action. So frontend action is an action that is triggered when a user comes to the page. You can do a lot of things with a frontend action, but the basic function of a frontend action is something that you want to run at a certain point. So for now, we want to run it when a user comes to the page, when the page has finished loading. So we want to run an action. So we click on the frontend actions. Then we click on new frontend action. So we're going to call it get a single directory. Click on enter. Then we want the frontend action to run on component mount. So what this means is that we want the frontend action to run immediately the page has finished loaded. Now, since we want to get a single item from the database, we're going to need the ID from the query variable that we created earlier to be passed to this frontend action. In order to do this, we need to create an input variable. This input variable is going to be called a directory. Let's call it directory ID. It's going to have the value of a number because it's going to represent the query variable. I'm going to click save. Then we add an event. So an event, it's something that will want to happen when the frontend action is triggered. So we want the frontend action to run an endpoint. So the endpoint is going to be the get directory that we created. Then the response as. The response as is simply a variable. Remember, a variable is a unit of storage. So we want to create a variable where the information that we get from the endpoint is going to be saved. So let's call it get directory response. So the get directory response is a variable that will save the response that we get from calling the endpoints get directory. Now, the response code as is also a variable. Whenever you get a success response from triggering an endpoint, it always comes with a success code. A success code could be 200, could be 500. 500 is a failure code. 44 is a not found code. So we want to save this code as well in a variable. So we'll call it get directory response code. And then we're going to need to pass a query variable to the endpoint. In order to do this, we're going to use the directory ID input variable that we created. This is going to save the query variable that we created for that page. It's going to be saved in the input variable. It's going to be passed to the input variable, and the input variable is going to be passed to the endpoint. So now we need to create what you call an app variable. The variable that we created here are called server variables. These are variables that are created in the backend and they store the results of the backend. We need a way to get the information from the backend and save it in the front end. I want to create a front end variable for this. In order to create a front end variable, we go to the elements page, we click variables, we create an app variable. Let's call it single directory. Save it as a model. Then we select the directory model, then we save. Now we need to pass that information into the app variable. So we'll go back to our front-end action, get a single directory, add an event. Then we choose the set field event type in the variables dropdown. So like single variable, single directory model, and then the value is going to be from the events, which is the get directory response. Then we click on save. Now that we've done that, we go back to the elements page, and then we try to map each element to the item and the newly created variable that we just created. So we click on the image, for example. We choose use data from, we click the plus sign. We click on global, single directory, and click on image. Click on image. Then we go to here. We want to have the name of the directory. We want to have it here. With this. Click on global. Go to single directory. Then we have the name here. Then we want to have the description here. So we'll click on use data from, global, single directory, description. Then we want to have the address here. So we'll click on use data from, global, single directory, address, and then we build the app. This is only going to take a few minutes. All right. So the final step now is to trigger the front-end action that we just created, which is the get a single directory front-end action. We need to trigger it when the user comes to the page for the first time. And so what we do is, so we click on, let's say we click on the div block. It could be any element. Then we add the front-end action. Then we want to trigger it on concatenated mounts. Then we run the action, get a single directory, and then we get the ID from the page variable, which is a query string parameter variable, and then we pass it to the action, and then we build. So this should take like a few minutes. All right, and then we preview the code. All right, so as you can see, we have the list of directories. Then we click on one of them, and then we get the information. So we get the image, we get the name of the directory, we get the description, and we get the address. All right, so in order to make the page a little bit nicer, so we can, as you can see, the image looks a little bit stretched. So we can make it in such a way that the image doesn't look as stretched as it looks right now. So what we can do is we can add a fit. We can change the fit to cover, right? And then we can add a padding or margin between the heading and the image. So we could click on spacing, add a margin, say 20 pixels or 40 pixels. And then we can add a margin between the address and the rich text. So we can go to sizing of spacing and add a margin, 40 pixels. And then we can ensure that, as you can see, we seem to need to add the font family to each element. And so this can be easily done by clicking on this and ensuring that it has the fonts family opposite sans that we're using. And then we can add it to the entire nav bar. Open sans, nope. Then add it here. Typography, font family, opposite sans. The heading. And then view the code. Good. Then refresh the page. Good. So as you can see, it doesn't look as stretched. And then we have the sofa lounge and we have the address.